The alarm woke Dr. Hannah Park at 3 in the morning. She stumbled out of bed in her small quarters on Saturn Station, her heart racing. In 5 years working as a xenolinguist at humanity's furthest monitoring post, the emergency alarm had never gone off. Not once. She rushed to the command center, still pulling on her uniform jacket. The station commander, an older man named Director Kwan, was already there, staring at the main screen with wide eyes. "What is it?" Hannah asked, moving beside him. "Unknown signal," Kwan said quietly. "Not human, not anything we've ever heard before." On the screen, a series of lights blinked in patterns. The computer was recording everything, trying to make sense of the data. Hannah sat down at her station and pulled up the raw transmission. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she began running analysis programs. The signal was definitely alien. That much was clear within seconds, but it wasn't just random noise from space. There was structure to it, meaning, desperation. "It's a language," Hannah whispered. "Someone is trying to communicate." She worked for 3 hours straight, barely blinking. The computer helped, comparing the patterns to mathematical sequences, to musical notes, to every form of communication humans had ever studied. Slowly, piece by piece, the message became clear. When she finally understood it, Hannah felt cold all over. "Director," she said, her voice shaking, "you need to call Earth Command right now." Within 6 hours, Captain Jiho Kang received orders that would change everything. He stood on the bridge of his ship, the UN Retribution, reading the classified message for the 3rd time. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Yuna Choi, waited patiently beside him. "Get me Admiral Shin," Jiho said finally. The view screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Taeyang Shin's stern face. The Admiral commanded Earth's 3rd Battle Group, 7 warships that represented humanity's military presence in deep space. "Captain Kang," the Admiral said, "you've read the decoded message?" "Yes, sir," Jiho replied. "Is it verified?" "Dr. Park is certain. The message is a distress call from a species called the Velorans. They're peaceful traders. Their ship is under attack by something called the Kravik Empire." The Admiral paused. "The Kraviks are demanding the Valorans surrender for slavery. The message says the Kraviks have already destroyed 2 Valoran escape pods." Jiho felt anger rise in his chest. "They're killing civilians?" "That's what the message indicates. The Valorans included coordinates. They're 3 days away at maximum burn." Admiral Shin leaned forward. "Earth Command wants to know if we should intervene." "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Granted." "We have to help them," Jiho said firmly. "If we don't, we're no better than the Kraviks." Admiral Shin smiled slightly. "That's what I told Earth Command too. All 7 ships of the 3rd Battle Group are being deployed. Your Retribution will lead the vanguard. We jump to FTL in 2 hours. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of activity. Jiho walked through his ship, checking with each department. The Retribution was a destroyer, smaller than the cruisers and battleships in the fleet, but fast and deadly. His crew of 200 worked efficiently, preparing weapon systems and shield generators. In the weapons bay, Jiho found his chief engineer checking the railgun systems. "How are we looking?" he asked. "All systems green, Captain," the engineer replied. "Our main railgun can punch through 3 meters of titanium alloy. Whatever these Kraviks have for armor, we'll go through it." Jiho nodded. Humanity had been preparing for first contact with hostile aliens for decades. Every ship in the fleet carried weapons designed to fight unknown enemies. Railguns that fired metal slugs at incredible speeds. Missiles with nuclear warheads. Laser batteries that could cut through hull plating. And the shield technology that could absorb tremendous amounts of damage. But they had never actually used these weapons against aliens before. This would be humanity's first real battle in space against another intelligent species. On the bridge, Lieutenant Yuna Choi ran simulations at her tactical station. She looked up as Jiho approached. Captain, I've been analyzing what we know about the Kravik ships from the Valoran transmission. They have 3 heavy cruisers attacking the trading vessel. 3 against 1 unarmed trader, Jiho said with disgust. Brave of them. The Velarans say the Kraviks have energy weapons and missile systems. Their technology seems comparable to ours, maybe slightly less advanced, but they have bigger ships. Size isn't everything, Lieutenant. What matters is how you use what you have. Yuna smiled. The Kraviks probably don't know what human military doctrine looks like. We might have the element of surprise. The final minutes before departure ticked away. Jiho stood at his command chair, watching his crew work. These were good people, trained and ready, but they were about to jump into a situation where they might have to kill, where some of them might die. All ships report ready, the communications officer announced. Admiral Shin's face appeared on the screen again. Battle Group 3, this is Admiral Shin. In a few moments, we will jump to FTL and travel to coordinates provided by the Valoran distress call. When we arrive, we may face hostile alien forces. We may be outnumbered. We may be outgunned. The Admiral paused, looking directly into the camera. But we are going anyway, because somewhere in the darkness of space, innocent beings are crying for help, and humanity answers that call. We don't know these Valorans. They've never done anything for us. But they are alive, they are thinking beings, and they deserve our protection. Jiho felt pride swell in his chest. Earth Command has authorized us to use any force necessary to protect the Valoran vessel and crew. Show these Kraviks what it means to face humanity. All ships, engage FTL drives on my mark. Admiral Shin raised his hand. For Earth, for the innocent, mark. The Retribution's FTL drive hummed to life. Outside the viewports, space seemed to stretch and twist. Then, in a flash of blue light, the ship jumped forward faster than light itself, hurtling toward an unknown enemy. Jiho sat in his chair, hands gripping the armrests. In 3 days, they would arrive at the Valoran coordinates. In 3 days, humanity would announce its presence to the galaxy with fire and fury. He thought about Dr. Hana Park, who had decoded the alien message. She had told Director Kwan something else, something that hadn't been included in the official report yet. The Valorans had mentioned that the Kravik Empire controlled hundreds of worlds, that they had never lost a war, that they viewed peaceful species as prey. Jiho didn't care. Bullies were bullies, whether they walked on Earth or flew through space, and he had never liked bullies. Lieutenant Choi, he said quietly, when we arrive, what's your assessment of our chances? Yuna thought for a moment. Sir, the Kraviks have been fighting wars for centuries. They have 3 heavy cruisers. We have 7 ships, but only 2 are cruiser class. That's not what I asked. Yuna grinned. We're going to blow them out of space, sir. That's the spirit. The ship raced through the void, carrying humanity toward its destiny. Behind them, Earth continued its daily life, unaware that everything was about to change. Ahead, in the darkness, the Kraviks were learning what it meant to attract human attention. It would be a lesson they would never forget. 3 days of waiting finally ended when the fleet dropped out of FTL space. What Captain Jiho Kang saw on his view screen made his blood run cold. The Valoran trading ship was dying. Its hull was torn open in dozens of places, leaking atmosphere and debris into space. 3 massive Kravik cruisers circled it like sharks, firing their weapons with casual cruelty. As Jiho watched, a small escape pod ejected from the trader's side. One of the Kravik ships immediately fired a bright red energy beam, and the pod exploded into fragments. They're targeting escape pods, Lieutenant Yuna Choi said, her voice tight with anger. They're not even trying to capture them. They're just murdering everyone. On the communications channel, Admiral Shin's voice was cold as ice. All ships, Battle Formation Theta, weapons free on my command. Prepare to engage. The 7 human warships spread out, forming a wide net around the Kravik vessels. The Kraviks hadn't noticed them yet. They were too focused on their helpless prey. Ensign Minji Bay, the young communications officer, suddenly held up her hand. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from the Kravik flagship. They know we're here." "Put it through," Jiho ordered. The view screen changed to show a Kravik for the first time. The creature was massive, easily twice the size of a human. Its skin was thick and gray, like armor plating. 4 eyes glowed red above a mouth full of sharp teeth. It wore what looked like military decorations across its chest. "Unknown vessels," the Kravik said, its voice translated by the ship's computer into rough English. "I am War Master Throck of the Kravik Empire. You have entered an active military operation. Leave immediately or be destroyed." Jiho glanced at Admiral Shin on the secondary screen. The Admiral nodded slightly, giving permission to respond. "This is Captain Jiho Kang of the United Earth Navy," Jiho said calmly. "You are attacking an unarmed civilian vessel and murdering escape pods. Cease fire immediately and withdraw from this system." War Master Throck laughed. It was an ugly, grinding sound. "Earth? Never heard of it. You are clearly a weak species if you defend prey animals. The Valorans exist to serve the strong. This is the law of the galaxy." "Not anymore," Jiho replied. "Last warning. Withdraw or face destruction." Throck's 4 eyes widened, then it laughed again. "Destruction? You have 7 tiny vessels. I have 3 heavy cruisers, each one larger than your biggest ship. Your weapons look primitive. Your hulls look thin." The Kravik leaned forward. "I will enjoy adding your species to the Empire's slave pens." "Wrong answer," Admiral Shin cut in. "All ships, weapons free. Engage." What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. The human ships moved like they had one mind, executing a battle plan that the Kraviks couldn't understand. Commander Suho Lee's stealth frigate, the Shadow of Soul, had been floating dark and silent at the edge of the battle space. Now it lit up its railgun, a weapon that fired solid metal slugs accelerated to impossible speeds by magnetic force. The slug hit Throck's flagship dead center in its reactor section. The Kravik cruiser's shields flickered and died. Alarms blared across the enemy ship as power failed throughout its systems. "What was that?" Throck roared. "What kind of weapon?" He never finished the sentence. The Retribution and 2 other destroyers unleashed a coordinated missile salvo. 30 missiles, each one guided by its own AI brain, swarmed toward the crippled flagship. The Kravik point defense systems tried to shoot them down but were overwhelmed. 23 missiles got through. Throck's ship exploded in a ball of nuclear fire. The other 2 Kravik cruisers immediately broke off their attack on the Valoran trader. They turned their weapons toward the human fleet, firing energy beams and launching their own missiles. But they were already behind. Lieutenant Yuna Choi had been studying Kravik tactics for 3 days during the FTL journey. She had noticed something important. The Kraviks bunched their ships together. They relied on concentrated firepower. It made them predictable. "All ships, execute Delta pattern," Admiral Shin ordered. The human fleet split apart, each ship moving on a different vector. The Kravik missiles lost their locks, confused by targets moving in 7 directions at once. Meanwhile, the human ships used their smaller size and better engines to circle the enemy cruisers like wolves around prey. The second Kravik cruiser tried to turn fast enough to track the Retribution, but Jiho had already anticipated the move. "Fire main railgun! Target their bridge section!" The railgun fired. The heavy slug tore through the cruiser's armor like paper, punching completely through the ship and out the other side. Everything in the slug's path was destroyed instantly. The Kravik bridge and everyone in it simply ceased to exist. Without its bridge crew, the cruiser drifted helplessly. Admiral Shin's flagship, the battleship Indomitable, finished it off with a barrage of laser fire that carved the ship into pieces. The last Kravik cruiser, now facing 7 angry human warships alone, tried to run. Its captain fired up the FTL drive, desperate to escape and warn the Empire about this terrifying new enemy. Commander Suho Lee had other ideas. The Shadow of Soul had been quietly maneuvering during the entire battle, staying dark and invisible. Now it positioned itself directly in the fleeing cruiser's path. At the last moment, it fired another railgun slug. The slug hit the Kravik cruiser's FTL drive just as it was spinning up. The result was catastrophic. The drive exploded, tearing the ship apart from the inside. Secondary explosions rippled through the hull. Within seconds, there was nothing left but debris. Silence fell over the battlefield. The entire engagement had lasted 47 minutes. 3 Kravik heavy cruisers destroyed. 0 human casualties. Not even a scratch on any human ship's hull. All ships, cease fire, Admiral Shin ordered. Damage report. One by one, the human captains reported in. Minor shield depletion on 2 ships. 1 missile launcher jammed on a destroyer. Nothing serious. Nothing that couldn't be fixed in hours. Jiho took a deep breath, letting the tension drain from his body. Lieutenant Choi, signal the Valoran ship. Let them know we're friendlies. Minji Bay worked her console, broadcasting on all frequencies. Valoran vessel, this is the United Earth Navy. The hostile ships have been destroyed. We are here to help. For a long moment, there was no response. Then a weak signal came through. Earth ship, thank you. We are badly damaged. Life support failing. Dispatch medical and engineering teams. Jiho ordered immediately. Get shuttles over there now. Colonel Doyun Huang commanded the Marine detachment aboard the Retribution. He was a big man with scars on his face from a training accident years ago. He led a team of 20 Marines and medics across the space between ships, using jetpacks to cover the distance. When they entered the Valoran trader, Doyen saw devastation. Bodies floated in corridors where the gravity had failed. Fires burned in sections where the Kravik weapons had penetrated. The air was thin and getting thinner. But there were survivors. 47 Valorans, huddled in a sealed cargo bay that still had air and heat. They were small creatures, barely reaching Doyun's chest, with fur that ranged from brown to gray. Large, gentle eyes stared at the human Marines with fear and hope mixed together. One Valoran stepped forward, wearing what looked like a captain's uniform. It spoke in a musical language that the translation device on Doyen's helmet converted to Korean, then to English. You saved us, the Valoran captain said, its voice trembling. We sent out the distress call, but we never thought anyone would come. Certainly not in time. Certainly not with enough force to fight the Kraviks. Doyen knelt down to look the small alien in the eyes. We heard your call. We came as fast as we could. You're safe now. The Valoran captain began to cry. The other Valorans crowded around, touching Doyen's armor gently, as if to make sure he was real. The Marines worked quickly, setting up portable life support and helping the survivors to the shuttles. Back on the Retribution, Jiho watched the rescue operation through the ship's cameras. 47 saved. But the Valoran ship had carried a crew of 93. The other 46 had died in the escape pods or when the Kraviks first attacked. Admiral Shin's face appeared on the screen. Captain Kang, well done. Your ship performed excellently. Thank you, sir. What are our orders? The Admiral was quiet for a moment. The Valoran captain has been brought aboard my ship. I've been speaking with him. He says the Kravik Empire controls 200 worlds. They've never lost a war. They view peaceful species as prey to be hunted and enslaved. Shin's expression was grim. By destroying these ships, we've declared war on the most powerful military force in this region of space. Jiho thought about that, about the implications, about what might come next. Then he thought about the Kravik war master Throk, laughing as his ships murdered civilians. about the Valoran captain crying with gratitude that someone had cared enough to help. "Good," Jiho said simply. "Let them come." 2 weeks after the battle, Governor Sora Yang stood in her office on New Busan, staring at the worst news she had ever received. The message on her screen was simple and terrifying. Kravik war fleet detected. 50 capital ships, entering New Busan system in 4 hours, demanding immediate surrender. New Busan was humanity's furthest colony, home to 3 million people. Farms stretched across the green valleys. Cities were still small and growing. The planet was peaceful, beautiful, and completely unprepared for war. Sora's hands shook as she activated the planetary defense network. Captain Hyun-ko's face appeared on the screen. He commanded the orbital defense station, humanity's only military presence in the system. "Governor," Hyun said calmly, "I've seen the sensor readings. 50 ships." "Can you fight them?" Sora asked, already knowing the answer. Hyun smiled sadly. "I have 1 defense station and 12 automated weapon satellites against 50 capital ships?" He paused. "I can buy you time. That's all." "How much time?" "Start evacuating civilians to the underground shelters. I'll give you every minute I can." 3 hours later, the Kravik fleet arrived. 50 massive ships dropped out of FTL space in perfect formation, surrounding the planet. They were bigger than the cruisers humanity had fought before. These were dreadnoughts, battleships, carriers, a fleet designed to crush entire civilizations. A transmission came through to the governor's office. Sora accepted it, her jaw set with determination. The Kravik on screen was even larger than War Master Throck had been. Gold decorations covered its armored chest. Its 4 red eyes glowed with arrogance. "I am War Master Vexil of the Kravik Imperial Navy," the alien said. "This planet is now property of the Kravik Empire. You will surrender immediately. You will turn over the war criminal Admiral Taeyang Shin for execution. You will provide us with 500,000 slaves to compensate for our losses." Sora felt her fear turn to anger. "This planet is sovereign human territory. We will not surrender. We will not provide slaves. And Admiral Shin is a hero, not a criminal." Vexil laughed. "You have no military ships in this system. Just 1 tiny defense station. You cannot fight, you cannot win. Surrender now, and we will only take slaves. Resist, and we will exterminate every human on this planet and take it for ourselves." "How about you go to hell?" Sora said quietly. Vexil's eyes widened. "What did you say?" "You heard me. We do not surrender. We do not bow to bullies. Come and take this planet if you can." She cut the transmission. For a moment, Sora sat in silence, wondering if she had just doomed 3 million people. Then she pressed the emergency broadcast button. "All citizens of New Busan, this is Governor Yang. We are under attack by hostile alien forces. Proceed immediately to the nearest shelter. Follow evacuation protocols. Do not panic. Help is coming." She hoped she was telling the truth about the help. In orbit, Captain Hyun-ko watched 50 enemy warships begin their approach. His defense station was impressive by colonial standards, bristling with railguns, missile tubes, and laser batteries. But it was just 1 station. His crew numbered only 48 people. "Captain," his tactical officer said nervously, "they're launching attack craft, hundreds of them." Hyun nodded. "All weapons. Engage at will. Let's show these bastards what humans are made of." The battle for New Busan began. The defense station's railguns spoke first, firing solid slugs at incredible velocity. 3 Kravik fighters exploded instantly. Then the missile tubes launched, sending smart missiles streaking toward the enemy capital ships. The Kraviks responded with overwhelming firepower, thousands of energy beams and missiles converging on the tiny human station. Hyun's shields held. Barely. "Concentrate fire on their closest dreadnought. Target their bridge and weapons systems." The station's main cannon, a massive railgun that ran through its entire central axis, charged up and fired. The slug hit the Kravik dreadnought in its command tower, and the tower simply disintegrated. The ship drifted out of formation, crippled. "One down," Hyun muttered. 49 to go. For 8 hours, the defense station fought like a cornered tiger. Hyun's crew worked without rest, loading weapons, managing shields, repairing damage as it happened. They destroyed 12 Kravik ships and hundreds of fighters. But slowly, inevitably, they were being overwhelmed. "Captain," the tactical officer reported, "shields are down to 15%. Port side railgun is destroyed. We're venting atmosphere on deck 4. Hyun looked around his bridge at his exhausted, determined crew. They were good people. They deserved better than to die here. But they had bought 8 precious hours for the civilians below. "Send a message to Governor Yang," Hyun said. "Tell her we're sorry we couldn't buy more time. Tell her it was an honor." Before the message could be sent, the sensors went crazy. The tactical officer looked up with wide eyes. "Sir, FTL signatures! Multiple ships dropping into the system!" On the view screen, space rippled and tore. Ships emerged from FTL in a dazzling display of light. Not just a few ships, not a small task force. 35 human warships, led by Admiral Shin's flagship, arrived at full combat readiness. "This is Admiral Taeyang Shin to Defense Station," the transmission came through. "Captain Ko, you've done well. Stand down and make repairs. We'll take it from here." Hyun felt relief wash over him. His crew cheered despite their exhaustion. The station's weapons fell silent as the main fleet moved forward. Admiral Shin stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, studying the tactical display. 50 Kravik ships, though 12 were destroyed and 1 was crippled. Against his 35. Not great odds, but odds could be overcome with better tactics. "War Master Vexil," Shin transmitted on open channels. "This is Admiral Taeyang Shin. You wanted me? Here I am. Leave this planet immediately or be destroyed." Vexil appeared on screen, its 4 eyes burning with hatred. "The human who murdered War Master Throck. You are a fool to come here. You are outnumbered. We will crush you and then burn your colony world to ash." "You're welcome to try," Shin said calmly. "All ships, execute hammer and anvil formation." The human fleet split into 2 groups. 20 ships formed a wide net, encircling the Kravik fleet from multiple angles. The other 15, including the Indomitable and the Retribution, drove straight toward the enemy center like a spear. The Kraviks were expecting a conventional battle. They formed their ships into a defensive wall, concentrating their firepower. It was exactly what Shin wanted them to do. All ships, launch missiles, full salvo. Hundreds of missiles erupted from the human fleet. The Kraviks activated their point defense, shooting down missile after missile. But the missiles weren't meant to hit. They were meant to distract. While the Kraviks focused on the missiles, the human ships used their superior speed to close the distance. They weaved between enemy fire, shields absorbing hits that got through. And then they were in close range, too close for the big Kravik guns to track properly. "Fire everything!" Shin ordered. The battle became chaos. Human destroyers darted between Kravik dreadnoughts, firing railguns at point-blank range. The slugs punched through armor that was never designed for such close combat. Laser batteries carved through hulls. Nuclear missiles detonated against shields, overloading them. Captain Jiho Kang piloted the Retribution with expert precision. "Lieutenant Choi, target that carrier. Hit it with everything we have." The Retribution's weapons blazed. The Kravik carrier, massive and slow, couldn't turn fast enough. The Retribution's main railgun fired 3 times in rapid succession. 3 slugs, 3 holes punched through the carrier's hull. The ship exploded from the inside as its munitions detonated. All across the battlefield, the Kraviks were learning a terrible lesson. They had ships, They had numbers, but humans had something else. Centuries of warfare against themselves. Humans knew every dirty trick, every tactical innovation, every way to turn weakness into strength. War Master Vexel realized too late that this was not a battle he could win. All ships retreat, jump to... A railgun slug from the Indomitable hit Vexel's flagship in the engine section. The FTL drive exploded, trapping the Kravik fleet in the system. No retreat, Admiral Shin said coldly. No mercy for those who threaten civilian populations. The battle lasted another hour. When it ended, 47 Kravik ships were destroyed. 3 were captured, their crews surrendering when they saw no hope of victory. The human fleet lost 8 destroyers and 1 cruiser. Painful losses, but nowhere near what the Kraviks had suffered. On New Busan, Governor Sora Yang watched from the Planetary Command Center as the last Kravik ship surrendered. Around her, people were crying with relief. 3 million civilians had been saved. Admiral Shin's transmission came through to her personal channel. Governor Yang, the planet is secure. Well done holding out until we arrived. Thank you, Admiral, Sora said, her voice shaking. Thank you for coming. We'll always come, Shin replied. That's what humanity does. But the Admiral's expression was troubled. Sora could see it on the screen. What's wrong? She asked. We captured some Kravik officers alive, Shin said quietly. We've been interrogating them. The news isn't good. He paused. This was just a punishment fleet, meant to crush one rebellious colony. The Kravik Empire has hundreds more ships. They're already assembling a main fleet 5 times this size. Sora felt her relief drain away. What do we do? Admiral Shin looked directly into the camera. We prepare for total war, because the Kraviks won't stop until we make them stop. The emergency session of Earth's United Council lasted for 16 hours. President Nari Lim stood at the podium, looking at the faces of the representatives from every nation on Earth. They were scared, angry, uncertain. But most of all, they were united. The Kravik Empire has declared humanity an enemy, President Lim said. They have stated their intention to exterminate our species. They are assembling a fleet of 500 warships to attack our worlds. She paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. We must decide how to respond. A representative from the European Union stood. Can we negotiate? Offer them something to avoid war? Admiral Shin, standing beside the president, shook his head. We've learned from the captured Kraviks that their empire doesn't negotiate with species they view as weak. They take what they want by force. The only language they understand is strength. Then we must show them strength, said the representative from the African coalition. But 500 ships? We have less than 300 vessels in our entire navy. Which is why, President Lim said, we must authorize Project Prometheus. Dr. Junho Nam, please present your findings. Dr. Junho Nam was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been working in secret laboratories for 5 years, developing weapons that humanity hoped it would never need. Now those weapons were humanity's only hope. Project Prometheus has 3 main components, Dr. Nam explained, displaying images on the massive screen behind him. First, improved FTL drives that can move our ships 30% faster. Second, antimatter torpedoes with destructive power 10 times greater than nuclear warheads. Third, a prototype weapon we call Ragnarok. What is Ragnarok? Asked the Asian Alliance representative. Dr. Nam hesitated. A planet killer. A weapon that can crack a world's crust and render it uninhabitable. It was designed as a last resort deterrent. Silence filled the council chamber. Finally, President Lim spoke. We hope we never have to use Ragnarok, but the Kraviks need to know that we have it. They need to understand that humanity will not be exterminated quietly. The vote was unanimous. Project Prometheus was authorized. Every shipyard on Earth and in the colonies began working around the clock. Every factory was converted to military production. Humanity was going to war. While Earth prepared, Commander Yunbi Song was already deep in enemy territory. She commanded a stealth frigate called the Silent Arrow, one of 5 ships sent to gather intelligence on Kravik space. Yunbi sat in her captain's chair, watching the sensor display as her ship drifted past a Kravik military outpost. The Silent Arrow used advanced technology to hide from sensors, making it invisible to enemy scans. Her crew of 30 specialists worked in silence, recording everything they saw. "Captain," her sensor officer whispered, "I'm detecting a massive shipyard in orbit around the 4th planet. Looks like they're assembling the punishment fleet there." Yunbi studied the data. Hundreds of ships all gathering in one location. The Kravik fortress world of Kravex Prime. It was the perfect target. "Get detailed scans of everything," she ordered. "Ship positions, defensive systems, supply lines. Admiral Shin needs to know what we're facing." For 2 weeks, the Silent Arrow and the other stealth ships mapped Kravik territory. They watched enemy patrol routes. They identified critical supply stations. They found weaknesses that could be exploited. When Commander Eunbi finally returned to Earth space, she brought information that would change the war. She met with Admiral Shin in a secure briefing room. "The Kraviks are arrogant," Yunbi reported, displaying holographic maps. "They've never lost a war, so they're not careful. Their core worlds have minimal defenses. Everything is concentrated at Kravex Prime, where they're building the punishment fleet." Admiral Shin studied the maps carefully. "If we strike Kravex Prime before the fleet launches, we could destroy their entire invasion force while it's still being assembled." "It's risky," Yunbi warned. "Kravex Prime is heavily fortified. 200 defense stations. At least 300 ships on permanent guard duty. But if we wait for them to finish assembling and let them come to us, they'll attack our colonies one by one. Earth might be next." Shin looked at the young commander. "We need to take the fight to them." Over the next 4 months, humanity built and trained like never before. The new FTL drives were installed in every ship. The antimatter torpedoes were mass-produced. Young men and women volunteered for military service by the millions. Earth's population had been peaceful for generations, but they remembered how to fight when survival was at stake. Captain Jiho Kang watched his crew train with the new weapons systems. The Retribution had been upgraded with the latest technology. His ship was faster now, more deadly, but also more complex. "Captain," Lieutenant Yuna Choi said during one training exercise, "these antimatter torpedoes are incredible. One torpedo can destroy a ship the size of a Kravik dreadnought." "Let's hope we get to test that theory in real combat," Jiho replied. "How is crew morale?" "Good, sir. Everyone knows what's at stake. No one wants to see Earth become another Kravik conquest." Admiral Shin called a meeting of all ship captains when the preparations were complete. 300 human warships gathered in orbit around Mars. Captain Jiho stood in the holographic conference room, surrounded by the faces of his fellow captains. "In 3 days, we attack Kravex Prime," Admiral Shin announced. "This will be the largest military operation in human history. We will jump into enemy territory, destroy their invasion fleet before it can launch, and cripple their ability to threaten human space." One captain raised her hand. "Sir, what about the moral implications? We're launching a preemptive strike. We're taking the war to their home system." Admiral Shin's expression was hard. "The Kraviks have made their intentions clear. They will not stop until humanity is destroyed or enslaved. They gave us no choice." He paused. "But I want to be clear about one thing. We are not like them. We will target only military installations. We will not harm civilians. We will not become monsters to fight monsters." The captains nodded. Humanity would fight. but they would fight with honor. On the day of the attack, President Narration broadcast to all of Earth and the colonies. Today, humanity strikes back against those who would destroy us. Today, we show the galaxy that humans do not submit, that we protect the innocent, that we stand against tyranny wherever we find it. And today, we pray for the brave men and women of our fleet. Come home safe. 300 ships jumped to FTL simultaneously, a coordinated movement that would take them deep into enemy space. Admiral Shin stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the stars stretch and blur. "All ships report ready, Admiral," the communications officer said. "Good," Shin replied. "When we arrive at Kravex Prime, there can be no hesitation. Hit them hard. Hit them fast. Show them what human warfare looks like." The fleet traveled through FTL space for 2 days. When they emerged at Kravex Prime, they found exactly what Commander Yunbi's reconnaissance had shown. Hundreds of Kravex ships spread across orbital shipyards. Defense stations scattered throughout the system. And in the center, the massive fortress world itself. "All ships, engage!" Admiral Shin ordered. The attack was devastating. Human ships poured antimatter torpedoes into the unprepared Kravex shipyards. Explosions rippled across space as ships still under construction were destroyed before they could even power up their weapons. The new torpedoes worked exactly as Dr. Junho Nam had promised. Each one detonated with the force of a small sun. The Kravex scrambled to respond, but they were caught completely by surprise. Their ships were scattered. Their defenses were designed to stop an attack from outside the system, not from an enemy that had jumped directly into their midst. Captain Jiho Kang led a squadron of destroyers against one of the main shipyards. "Target the construction platforms. Don't let them launch any completed ships." The Retribution's weapons blazed. Railguns tore through the thin armor of ships still on the assembly line. Antimatter torpedoes destroyed entire sections of the massive shipyard. Lieutenant Yuna Choi coordinated the attack with precision, ensuring every shot counted. All across the system, human ships executed their attacks with ruthless efficiency. This was not a battle. This was a massacre. The Kravex punishment fleet, meant to exterminate humanity, died before it could even leave port. 500 Kravex warships destroyed in 6 hours. Orbital shipyards reduced to debris. Supply depots obliterated. The Kravex military infrastructure shattered. Admiral Shin broadcast the entire battle on every channel, open and encrypted. Every species in the galaxy would see what had happened, would see that the Kravex Empire had finally met an enemy they couldn't defeat. As the human fleet prepared to withdraw, a transmission came from the planet below. It was the Kravex Emperor himself. "You have made a grave mistake, humans," the Emperor said, his 4 eyes blazing with fury. "You think you have won. You have only guaranteed your extermination. We will rebuild. We will return. And we will burn every human world to cinders." Admiral Shin's response was broadcast across the galaxy. "Then we will be waiting. And next time, we'll finish what we started here." The human fleet jumped back to FTL, leaving Kravex Prime in ruins behind them. The executions were broadcast across every channel in the galaxy. 10,000 human prisoners, captured from isolated colonies and remote stations, were brought before Kravex cameras. The Emperor himself ordered their deaths, one by one, as revenge for the attack on Kravex Prime. President Nari Lim watched the broadcasts in her office, tears streaming down her face. Each prisoner was given a chance to speak before they died. They were brave. They told the cameras to stay strong, to never surrender, to make the Kravex pay for every drop of blood. When the last prisoner died, President Lim stood and walked to her communication console. She contacted Admiral Shin directly. "Admiral," she said, her voice cold and clear, "the Kravex Empire has signed its own death warrant. I am authorizing total war protocols. We will not stop until their capability to harm any species is ended forever. 6 months later, humanity's armada gathered at the edge of Kravik space. 600 warships, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. But they were not alone. 12 other alien species had joined them. The Valorans, grateful for their rescue, had brought their merchant fleet converted into support vessels. Other species who had suffered under Kravik rule brought whatever ships they could spare. None of them had powerful militaries, but they wanted to see the Kravik Empire fall. Ambassador Valora, the Valoran representative, stood beside Admiral Shin on the bridge of the Indomitable. The small, furry alien looked up at the human commander with respect. "When we sent that distress call," Valora said quietly, "we never imagined it would lead to this. The liberation of half the galaxy." "Your distress call showed us that the galaxy needed help," Shin replied. "We couldn't ignore that, and we won't stop until every species is free." Captain Jiho Kang prepared his crew aboard the Retribution. After months of combat, his ship bore scars of battle, repaired hull sections, replaced systems, but the crew was experienced now, hardened by war but still holding on to their humanity. "This is it," Jiho told his bridge crew. "The Kravik homeworld, their last major stronghold. If we win here, the war is over." Lieutenant Yuna Choi studied the tactical displays. The Kravik home system was a fortress. 200 defense stations orbited the planet. 800 warships protected their capital. Planetary shields that could withstand orbital bombardment. It was the most heavily defended location in known space. "We're going to need every trick we have," Yuna said. "This won't be like Kravik's Prime. They're ready for us this time." Admiral Shin broadcast one final message to the Kravik Emperor. "This is Admiral Taeyang Shin of the United Earth Navy. We offer you one last chance. Surrender. Face trial for your crimes against sentience. Dismantle your empire and free all enslaved species. Do this, and your people will be allowed to live in peace." The Kravik Emperor's response was predictable. "Never. We are the rightful rulers of this galaxy. We will fight to the last Kravik. Come and take our world if you dare, human." "Then we dare," Shin said quietly. He turned to his fleet commanders. "All ships, execute Operation Hammer. Let's end this." The battle for the Kravik homeworld began at dawn on a day that would be remembered forever. The human fleet split into 3 massive groups. One group, led by Admiral Shin, would attack the orbital defenses head-on. Another group, commanded by Commander Yunbi Song, would use stealth technology to infiltrate behind the enemy lines. The third group would stand ready to exploit any weakness that appeared. Captain Jiho Kang's Retribution was part of the main assault force. As they closed with the Kravik defenses, space lit up with weapons fire. Energy beams, missiles, railgun slugs, all exchanged between hundreds of ships. The scale of the battle was beyond anything humanity had ever experienced. "Shields holding at 60%, Yuna reported. "Multiple enemy locks. Returning fire." The Retribution danced through the battle, its upgraded engines allowing it to dodge the worst of the enemy fire. Its weapons carved through Kravik ships with deadly precision. But the defenders were fighting for their homeworld, and they fought with desperate courage. Commander Yunbi Song's stealth group struck from an unexpected angle, hitting the defense stations from behind. The stations were powerful, but they were designed to face outward. Attacking from the inside of the defensive sphere, Yunbi's ships destroyed station after station before the Kraviks could reposition. General Seok Yoon commanded the Marine forces waiting in the troop carriers. His orders were to land on the planet once orbital superiority was achieved. 50,000 Marines, ready to fight on the ground if necessary. The battle raged for 3 days. Human ships took heavy damage. 40 vessels were destroyed. Thousands of crew members died. But slowly, inevitably, the Kravik defenses crumbled. Human tactics were superior. Human weapons were more advanced, and human determination was absolute. On the third day, the last Kravik orbital defense station fell. The planetary shields failed as their power generators were destroyed from orbit. Admiral Shin broadcast to the planet below. "Kravik military commanders, this is your final warning. Surrender now or face ground invasion." For a long moment, there was no response. Then, surprisingly, a transmission came from the surface. It was not the Emperor. It was a Kravik general, his armor damaged and his expression weary. "This is General Krath of the Kravik Defense Forces," the alien said. "The Emperor has fled to his bunker and refuses to surrender. But I have seen enough death. I will not sacrifice more of my people for his pride." The general paused. "I am ordering all Kravik military forces to stand down. We surrender." Across the planet, Kravik ships powered down their weapons. Defense batteries fell silent. The war was over. General Seok Yoon led his Marines to the planet's surface. They met with General Krath in the capital city, a massive place of stone buildings and wide streets. Kravik civilians watched nervously as human soldiers moved through their streets, expecting violence. But the violence didn't come. Seok's Marines helped wounded Kraviks to medical stations. They provided food to civilians caught in the crossfire. They were professional, disciplined, and respectful, even to their defeated enemies. In the Emperor's bunker, a team of human special forces found the Kravik Emperor hiding with his closest advisors. They arrested him without firing a shot. The Emperor, who had ruled with absolute power for decades, was now a prisoner. The war crimes trials began a month later. The Kravik Emperor stood before a galactic tribunal, made up of representatives from 20 different species. The evidence of his crimes was overwhelming: genocide, slavery, the murder of billions across hundreds of worlds. He was found guilty on all counts. Ambassador Valora served as one of the judges. She looked at the Emperor who had terrorized her people for generations. "You believed that might made right," she said, "that the strong could prey upon the weak forever, but you were wrong. The galaxy has seen what happens when good beings stand together, when they refuse to accept cruelty as the natural order." The Emperor was sentenced to life imprisonment. His empire was dissolved. Every conquered world was granted independence. The enslaved species were freed. 10 years after the war ended, Captain Jiho Kang stood at a memorial on Earth. The memorial bore the names of 4,000 humans who had died in the war. It was a heavy price, but it had bought freedom for billions. Admiral Shin, now retired, stood beside him. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Jiho asked. "Starting this war? So many people died." Shin was quiet for a long moment. "I think about that question every day," he admitted. "But then I remember the Valorans and all the other species who were suffering under Kravik rule. What would have happened to them if we had ignored their call for help?" Jiho nodded slowly. "We saved them, but at such a cost." "That's the burden of power," Shin said. "Having the ability to help means having the responsibility to use it wisely and to live with the consequences of our choices." Across the galaxy, peace had taken root. The Galactic Protection Council, an alliance of 50 species, maintained order. Disputes were resolved through diplomacy rather than warfare. The Council's fleet, trained by human instructors, stood ready to defend any member species against aggression. Dr. Hannah Park, the xenolinguist who had first decoded the Velaran distress call, now ran the Interspecies Cultural Institute. Species who had once been enemies were learning to understand each other. Children of a dozen different races studied together, learning that differences made them stronger rather than weaker. The Ragnarok weapon, the planet killer that humanity had built but never used, was ceremonially dismantled. Its components were scattered across the solar system, kept as a reminder of the terrible price of total war. President Narration, speaking at the dismantling ceremony, made a promise. "Humanity built terrible weapons because we faced a terrible threat," she said. "But we do not wish to be defined by our capacity for destruction. We wish to be defined by what we do next, by how we use our strength to protect rather than to conquer, by how we build rather than destroy." On New Busan, Governor Sora Yang watched the sun set over the farms and cities that had nearly been destroyed. 3 million people lived their lives in peace, unaware of how close they had come to annihilation. She thought about Captain Hyun Ko, who had died defending the orbital station, about all the brave people who had given everything to protect others. Ambassador Valora traveled to Earth to attend the 10-year memorial ceremony. She stood before the gathered crowd, her small frame commanding attention through the strength of her words. 10 years ago, my people sent a desperate call into the void," she said. "We did not know if anyone would hear. We did not know if anyone would care. But humanity heard, and they came." She paused, emotion thick in her voice. "They came not for profit, not for conquest. They came because we needed help. And in doing so, they changed the galaxy forever." The crowd was silent, listening. Today, 12 species live free because humanity refused to ignore our suffering. Today, billions of beings live in peace because humans were willing to fight for something greater than themselves. Today, the galaxy knows that evil will not go unchallenged, that cruelty will not be tolerated, that when the weak cry out, there are those who will answer. Valora looked at the memorial, at the names of the human dead carved into stone. "We will never forget what you gave us, and we will honor your sacrifice by building the kind of galaxy you dreamed of, one where all beings, large or small, strong or weak, can live without fear." As the ceremony ended and people slowly dispersed, Jiho stood alone before the memorial. He placed his hand on the stone, feeling the cool surface beneath his palm. So many names, so many friends lost. Lieutenant Yuna Choi approached and stood beside him. She had been promoted to commander now with her own ship. "Do you think they would be proud of what we've built?" she asked. Jiho looked out at the peaceful city beyond the memorial, at the Valoran, Kravik, and human children playing together in a nearby park, at the species who had once been mortal enemies, now working side by side. "Yes," he said finally, "I think they would." The galaxy was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still problems to solve, still work to be done. But for the first time in living memory, there was hope. Hope that different species could coexist. Hope that justice could prevail over tyranny. Hope that one species' decision to answer a cry for help could change everything. And in the darkness of space, on countless worlds, beings looked up at the stars and knew they were not alone. That somewhere out there others were watching, others who would come if they called, others who would answer.